It's time to do a little Christmas shopping. Our dream off season for the New York Mets, the focus of the latest edition of the Bleav in Mets podcast. We welcome you in. Chris Schubert, Jack McKessie here with you. Episode 19 for us. These episodes coming fast and furious. We are just piling up the numbers. And today, maybe our favorite episode to date because we get to let our wildest imaginations run wild. And for the first time in the history of the show, the doc where we have all of the notes does not have anything on it. Jack did not share with me his list of players for the dream offseason. I did not share with Jack my list of players for this offseason. I went old school. It's on pen and paper here for the show today, and that is what we are going to discuss. Jack, I'm very excited. I believe we are going to have 2 names of overlap, I think, is my early prediction for this, because there's one that's a guaranteed overlap, but I am excited to see if you and I had a different approach and had different names for this offseason. I think that'll be a lot of fun. How are you, my friend?
I'm great, Chris. I was just going to say I don't know if he's on your list. He was not on mine, but Frankie Montas is part of this Mets offseason, and I guess now he will have to be factored in to my ideal wish list because he's already on the team.
Yeah, so he is not a part of this process because he's already on the team. We are operating with him as a member of the roster just like we would anybody else, right? We are not going to sign another catcher because Francisco Alvarez is the catcher. We can't fill Frankie Montas' rotation spot because they paid him $17 million a year. So we have to work around that, whatever we feel about that. And if you missed our thoughts about that, we did an emergency pod on Monday discussing our immediate thoughts on the Frankie Montas signing. So go back and listen to that in the podcast feed. We are now just marching ahead of what we would want this to look like. I am betting that we have 2 players in common. If you are the betting type, BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on anything from football to the NBA, college basketball, NHL to UFC, head to BetOnline today and don't forget to use the promo code Bleav, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. Jack, I will ask you this question. How would you like to start? Where would you like us to start this dream offseason breakdown? Because I have it broken down by position. I don't just have a bunch of names. I went a step further. I have the contract AAV for all of these guys, so I can tell you exactly what I think the Mets are going to spend this offseason. So I've gone maybe a little bit above and beyond, but where would you like to start?
First, I just want to say that was a beautiful segue into the ad read right there. That
Thank you.
Really well done. First, I think we can start and get the easiest name off the bat, the one that I think you and I both know is on both of our lists, and that is Juan Soto.
Yes.
He is far and away the belle of the ball in this offseason. He is the free agent that every team wants. We did an entire episode on him alone a couple episodes ago, and with good reason. He is one of the best players in baseball. The Mets have the money to afford him. He should be the top of their grocery list this offseason, and in an ideal offseason, he is easily the name that I will be thinking about for a long time.
Yeah, I think with Juan Soto, he's on my list as well. I think he's going to get a $50 million AAV from the New York Mets in order to come to this team, and I wouldn't be surprised if it actually ends up being higher than that if a bidding war breaks out. We have reached that time with the way that everybody is reporting and talking about the Juan Soto situation. I've got Twitter open on the other screen. Like, I am every so often making sure that something hasn't happened yet because we are in that stage where they say before the winter meetings, Andy Martino of SNY said it could come down as early as this week. We've got 2 days left in this week for it to be impactful because I don't think they're going to do a weekend news dump of Juan Soto signing with somebody. So I feel like it's going to happen either tomorrow on Thursday or Friday. We're recording this episode on Wednesday. I think it'll hit the podcast feeds on Wednesday as well. So we are keeping our eye on whether or not this gets done. There's nothing more that we can add. If you want our extended thoughts on Juan Soto, listen to the almost hour breakdown that we did of Juan Soto, our thoughts, everything that goes into him being the player that he is. But yes, Juan Soto on my list as well. Okay, we'll do it this way.
Okay.
How many starting pitchers in your dream offseason are the Mets adding? Again, Frankie Montas already on the team.
In my dream offseason,
yes,
it is between 3 and 4, I think.
Okay. I have 3. And for the video audience, I apologize. You're not going to see me for a second because I dropped my pen, so I have to get down and get this because this is how I take notes during the show. So
I technically have 3. One of my options is a sign one of the following pitchers.
Oh, okay. So I have
2 that are locks.
I have 3, in my dream offseason.
Okay.
I have a fourth who is not technically a starting pitcher, but could be a starting pitcher. And I think you know the bucket that I'm shopping in there because we've talked about this person off air. We have not discussed him on air.
Yes, I know exactly who you're talking
So let's start with the bona fide starters. I will, you can go first. You can share your first name, and I'll tell you if he's on my list or not, and then we can go from there.
Okay, I would love if the Mets brought back our ace, Sean Manaea.
All right, we can officially say we have two names similar because I also have Sean Manaea as returning to the New York Mets as part of my dream offseason.
Yeah, it boils down to imagine what a full season of post pitching adjustment Sean Manaea could look like, because we talked at length about what his second half looked like after making that arm slot adjustment, after he was able to throw that crossbody pitch, I guess, his entire arsenal crossbody. And I don't know what his market is going to look like because of how good he looked down the stretch, especially with, as we talked in our Frankie Montas episode, the starting pitching market kind of heating up and maybe having some more inflated numbers than usual. But if the Mets are able to bring back Manaea on a full season of what he did in the end of 2024, it would be, I think, a great addition to the rotation for the next few years.
I think what is so difficult about the starting pitching market is you've got Corbin Burns, you've got Max Fried, you've got Jack Flaherty, right? These are the top end guys. Blake Snell would have been in there before he signed. Mm-hmm. All of those guys, not named Sean Manaea, you would obviously be able to watch what they've done in different places. With Corbin Burns, you can see what he did in Milwaukee, and David Stearns knows him very well, and you can see what he did in Baltimore last year. And with Max Fried, you can just look at all of the great things that he did in Atlanta. But the one thing that you don't know if you're David Stearns, you don't know if you're Steve Cohen, that you don't know if you're the New York Mets front office, and the Yankees have this problem as well. You can't correctly evaluate or identify how a starting pitcher or how any player in that regard is going to deal with the roller coaster ride, the ups and the downs that are being in New York. You don't have an answer to that question. The New York Yankees thought they were getting the steal of all steals when they got Sonny Gray. He got to New York and was a shell of himself. He left New York and started to look like the pitcher that was in Oakland and in Cincinnati and was awesome. And it got paid a lot of money by the Cardinals, right? So that is something you aren't able to quantify until you have that person in your building. You know what I can unequivocally say about Sean Manaea? He knows how to handle New York because he did it on the biggest stage of them all. He was running out of gas in the second half of the season and into the postseason, and yet he still took the ball and he still delivered over and over and over again when the team needed it. There is not a bigger start that anybody had down the stretch than those starts that he made with the season on the line in September, the starts that he made in the postseason. There was no more pressure-packed moments for the 2024 New York Mets. He delivered. So I can say with certainty, you can handle the big market pressure. And you're going to sense a theme here with another starter that I have on this list. You got to be able to handle New York. I know with 100% certainty, Sean Manaea can handle New York. Give me that as one of my top-end starting pitchers for my rotation. So it was a no-brainer for me for Sean Manaea. I will throw a name out there.
Okay.
It's not going to be new. This is not going to be a new name for me to discuss. But I mentioned I need somebody that knows how to handle a big market. I need somebody who knows how to handle that pressure. How about getting somebody who just recently was a part of a World Series championship team? Why not get somebody who falls right in line with the way the New York Mets have operated under David Stearns with signing starting pitchers? Short-term, a little high AAV, player opt-outs, allow you to kind of reset your value. How about we talk to Walker Buehler? How about we get a nice 2-year, $40 million deal and pay him $20 million a year on an AAV? Maybe you got to sweeten the pot a little bit more because of what Frankie Montas just got. But I think you can get him anywhere from $20 to $25 million. And you give him a 2-year deal. You give him the opt-out after year 1. And you allow him to get into the pitching lab, work with Jeremy Hefner, and get back to what we saw at the latter stages of the postseason, because it's still in there, that ultra-dominant frontline starter. And I have full faith. This is unlike the Frankie Montas situation where I've got a better history, a better resume with Walker Buehler than I do with Frankie Montas. Get me that guy in the rotation as well. So the front of my rotation can be Kodai Senga, it can be Sean Manaea, it can be David Peterson, and then it can be Walker Buehler as my number 4 starter with Frankie Montas as my 5 starter. Yeah, sign me up for that. So Walker Buehler for me at $20 million AAV. Again, These numbers are just me kind of projecting based on what the crowdsource, the contract projections are. I kind of sweeten the pot a little bit because I think starting pitching is getting a little bit more than we all anticipated. So I got him over that 20 mark, but get me Walker Buehler on this team because that is another nice arm that fits perfectly to the way David Stearns and company operate.
Yeah. So now we can officially say we have 3 names in common. All 3 so
I
far.
sold you on this.
You did. And you sold me before even before the NLCS and the World Series.
Oh, I think these text messages I'll look up in my text messages while you're talking. I think this dates back to the regular season, Walker Buehler take.
I think you're right. And to clarify here, Walker Buehler in the regular season threw 71 1/3 innings and had a 5.38 ERA. So that's a little worrying. And when you look at just those numbers and you think about, 2 years, $20 million a year, that could raise some eyebrows potentially. But if you look at what kind of pitcher he was in the NLCS and the World Series, kind of more back to his dominant self, he added some spin rate, I believe, to his fastball, which really helped him get out of some stickier situations. I think Walker Buehler is one of those guys that, like you said, can be a short-term, higher AAV guy. It's more of a cushion deal because of his poor performance in 2024, but I think there's a really good upside here, and he could rise as high as the number 2 starter, depending on the performances of guys like David Peterson and Sean Manaea. So Walker Buehler's on my list. He was one of my guys that I mentioned was sign one of these guys, one of these 3 guys. So that I think I'll segue that into my other 2 on that list. And so I would like the Mets ideally to sign one of these pitchers as part of their offseason.
Okay.
Walker Buehler was one of them.
Okay.
And then I'm going to bring up a name that you have also brought up before, Chris, and that's Shane Bieber. And the situation is this. Shane Bieber was one of the best pitchers in baseball before he got hurt. He only had 2 starts in 2024, but in those 2 starts, he threw 12 innings, gave up 0 runs, and was leading the majors with 20 strikeouts in those 2 starts. Now, Bieber, because he has also won a Cy Young before, is going to be a little bit more expensive, I think. But I think because of that injury, because he needed Tommy John and missed almost all of last season, he could be a candidate as well for one of those shorter-term, higher AAV deals. And that's why I kind of slotted him in next to Walker Buehler here, because the upside that you get with Bieber is astounding. It's Cy Young levels. It's just the question of how he's going to look post Tommy John, how his recovery is going to go this offseason, how things might get tweaked with the Mets pitching development system. But if the Mets are able to bring in a guy like Shane Bieber instead of Walker Buehler, I'd be happy. If they brought in both, I would be over the moon, because frankly, I think they both are going to pitch well in 2025 and potentially beyond. But those 2 guys are, I think, really good candidates for what David Stearns is trying to do in terms of building up this rotation.
23 starts for Shane Bieber over the last 2 seasons combined, only 130 innings. The last time he made 30 starts and threw over 180 innings, you got to go back to 2022, where he made 31 starts, threw 200 innings, went 13-8 with a 2.88 ERA. And I think if you want a comparison, and listen, sometimes we do this in media and in sports and in podcasting, and it's kind of like lazy comparison. But I think the way that the Mets have already handled this offseason with Frankie Montas, it's not lazy because it's very clear what their plan is. They saw what they did with Sean Manaea and Luis Severino, and they are doubling down on that philosophy, and they are doubling down on, hey, we're not going to give $35 million to Corbin Burns. We're not doing it. We're not giving $30+ million to a guy that more often than not, even though Corbin Burns is awesome, starting pitchers go 5 or 6 innings. Like, we're just going to piecemeal it together because we believe so strongly in our foundation. So it's easy to be like, hey, Shane Bieber fits in that mold, but this is Luis Severino all over again. You have to go back multiple years for the last time he completed a full season. You have to go back a really long time to see the last time he took on a lot of workload. And yes, perfect example, if you got Shane Bieber and you signed him in September and in August, we're going to start getting nervous if Shane Bieber has been healthy the entire year, because he's going to be creeping up on an innings cap where you're going to be like, okay, maybe he's going to start to run out of steam here, and it's going to feel very similar to Sean Manaea and Luis Severino. I'm saying that ahead of time, and that's okay because he has a career 3.22 ERA. In 2023, when he made 21 starts, he had a 3.8 ERA. I'll take that. I'll take that. He's 29. I'll take that. So, yeah, I'm fully on board with this. I do want to correct the record. I found a text message from September, the first week of September, in which I texted you the following. if the Mets keep most of their coaching staff on the pitching side intact, they are going to feel really confident in signing Walker Buehler and or Shane Bieber. That was in the first week of September. I made that comment to you, and you responded with, that's a really good point. And I said they are going to feel super emboldened about taking guys who need a retool.
Yeah.
Here we are talking about both of those guys as dream fits for the Mets this offseason.
Yeah, 100%. You planted the seed back then. I think that was like around the time we started this podcast together.
Yeah.
So like I am fully bought in on both of them. I think to address some of the concerns about Shane Bieber and running out of gas, I would point to the fact that I really think there's a solid chance, and obviously the rest of the offseason has to play out, but I think there's a really solid chance that the Mets end up pivoting back to a 6-man rotation look because it will help keep Kodai Senga fresh, especially after a essentially empty workload in 2024. Right. And they have some of the depth to do that.
We will always have that brave start, okay? We will always have that brave start.
But they have some of the depth to do that because they signed Frankie Montas. They've got, in this scenario, Sean Manaea back. They've got Kodai Senga, obviously. They already have David Peterson and Paul Blackburn in the rotation as well. They have guys like Tyler McGill. And they're set up where they can have a 6-man rotation, and I think that would not only benefit Senga in this situation, but also Shane Bieber. So if they decide to go with Bieber over Walker Buehler, then I think there's a solid chance that they are going to go with that 6-man rotation spot. And speaking of Kodai Senga and Japanese pitchers and 6-man rotations and weeks off between starts, the third pitcher I have in my sign one of these guys is Roki Sasaki. And it's very easy to make a case for this guy. I'm going to list two of the top reasons the Mets should sign this guy. One, because of his coming over when he is, and with the NPB posting rules, he is not going to cost any money in the free agent market, so to speak. He will be part of the international signing pool money that the Mets are spending. They're not going to be hamstrung by any contract to give out to Roki Sasaki. My second reason is Roki Sasaki is going to be 23 years old for the entirety of the 2025 season. He turns 24 next November. So even if you didn't have any information about how good he was, the fact that he's coming over from Japan, the fact that he's 23, and the fact that he's not going to cost an arm and a leg are, I think, plenty enough reasons to sign Sasaki to a contract.
I'd like to add a third reason, if that's all right with you.
Please do. I had a feeling you would.
He's very good. That's my third reason for signing Roki Sasaki, because you have a 6-man rotation with Roki Sasaki in there. It feels like we're rubbing off on each other, even though we haven't had this conversation. I also have Roki Sasaki down as part of my dream offseason, because I'm here to tell you, this is the only player on this list that I don't think it's feasible for him to be a New York Met. Like, I don't think there's any momentum there. Now, maybe they'll surprise us out of nowhere and they'll sign him. It's certainly possible. Now, he hasn't even been posted yet, so that you can't even technically talk to the guy. So who knows what the future will hold there, but I do have Roki Sasaki because I see the rotation with the way that my offseason is laid out. Senga, Manaea, Buehler, Peterson, Montas, Sasaki, and you feel pretty good about how that rotation plays out going into 2025 and beyond. So yeah, I'm also in on Roki Sasaki. I didn't put a number down because he doesn't count. It doesn't really count towards AAV. Yes, you have to pay him, but it's from international bonus pool money. It doesn't count the same as what their free agent budget is, and I have them blowing past whatever budget they could potentially have for this year. I have them spending more money than they did last year, and that's fine. Like their payroll at the end of last year was like $336. I have them way over that already.
Yeah. So to recap right now, you have who again in your ideal starting rotation?
So I have them signing Juan Soto, which we both agree on, and then I have them adding Sean Manaea, Walker Buehler, and Roki Sasaki, 3 starters. And that's, by the way, let me just make something clear. I have them getting 3 starters here, and I gave the 3 names. Whatever their offseason looks like, they need 3 more starters. Like, they need to be swimming in these waters, regardless of who the names are, and we'll debate whether or not we like the names once they sign them. But even after signing Montas, they need 3 more starters.
I agree. And so with that being said, I said I definitely want them to bring in Sean Manaea. I said I definitely want them to bring in one of Buehler, Bieber, and Sasaki. But I have a third wild card name here that is not a free agent.
Okay, hold on. Oh, you have a trade candidate.
I have a trade candidate.
You are going to convince me about Garrett Crochet is what you're going to do.
I'm going to convince you about Garrett Crochet.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of upside to a trade for Garrett Crochet, not least of which is he would not cost any money in free agency because he's not a free agent. He has 2 more years of team control. He is, I think, in his second year of arbitration eligibility this offseason. He will reach his last year of arbitration and last year before free agency in 2026. And on top of that, he's 25. He doesn't turn 26 until mid-June. He was, even though he's with the White Sox, one of the best pitchers in baseball last year or this past year. He had a excellent season in terms of workload for a guy who was not really a starter before this year. He made 32 starts for the freaking Chicago White Sox with 146 innings pitched. He had an ERA below 4. It was at 3.58 on the season. His stuff is excellent, particularly that fastball that can just blow by guys. He's probably going to want an extension, so you have to figure that into, or take that into account when you think about the Mets trading for a guy like Garrett Crochet. But just the upside that's there, and the fact that he has demonstrated an ability to stay healthy over the course of a full season after injury concerns in the past and after not really being a starter before, I just think there's like a really good chance that the Mets are going to be intrigued by someone like that. Obviously, it's going to cost a decent amount in the trade in terms of trade value. I wrote down some names here. Maybe I can get your thoughts on this, Chris, but guys like Jeff McNeil and Brett Beatty, I think, could definitely be options in that trade to the White Sox. I have in here also maybe Christian Scott. I know that's maybe a controversial or crazy thing to say after making his debut, but
how dare you trade Christian Scott?
But he's not going to be a factor for a baseball team in 2025 more than likely, and the White Sox are not going to be competing yet. And there was clear upside with him with the Mets this year. And then some guys who haven't even debuted yet, maybe Blade Tidwell in the Mets farm system. And because of Garrett Crochet's value being one of the best pitchers, one of the best starters in baseball this past year, it's probably going to cost a higher end prospect as well. So I wrote down here maybe Jet Williams, even Ronnie Mauricio, but Luis Angel Acuna. Like, the Mets have a plethora of middle infielders that they don't need all of. And so I think a few of those guys, and maybe a Jeff McNeil, Brett Beatty to give a major league ready player could be in the cards. But there's so much upside to Crochet. And if it doesn't work out, like, you can add in some kind of option and extension, or you could try to cut ties without even extending him. There's just a lot of possibilities, I think, with Crochet.
Yeah, I think a Crochet deal, unfortunately, they're going to ask for the moon, and I think it's going to start with one of Drew Gilbert or Jet Williams. And we're going to have to evaluate as an organization, if I'm David Stearns and the New York Mets, what my appetite is for that. Yeah. And maybe you try to float them a lesser package that includes more names that you maybe start around a Luis Angel Acuna, because you don't want to move a Drew Gilbert, you don't want to use a Jet Williams, and it is Acuna, it is maybe a Jonah Tong, one of the lower-end starting pitcher prospects, because you probably don't want to move Brandon Sprout. You probably view him very quickly being able to help you in the big leagues. Tong is maybe a couple more years away from being able to help you, so maybe that entices the White Sox. There are some creative ways to do it. Their farm system is not perfect. It's not in the best place it can be, but it is in a much better place than it was, let's say, before Steve took over the team. They have done such a good job rehabbing their minor league system, and trading Scherzer, trading Verlander. They were able to very quickly kind of build this back up, and the player development has done a really nice job. I will throw out a different candidate on the trade front to just keep an eye on, and I don't know what their appetite is to move him, but I think their resources might be limited, and I think they may be looking to free up some cash. I would call Arizona and see if they would move Zach Gallen. He's owed $14 million reportedly in arbitration. That's what the estimate is. He's a Scott Boras client. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. I don't think Arizona is a team that is going to throw $28 to $30 million a year for a starting pitcher that's a Scott Boras client. I just don't think it's going to happen. So if he's going to walk at the end of the year, you maybe slap the qualifying offer on him, but you get a draft pick back. Like, I think you are going to get a much better package now in this offseason than you would if you maybe traded him at the deadline or if you just let him walk in free agency. And they've got Brandon Pfaadt. They have Merrill Kelly. They signed Eduardo Rodriguez last year. Jordan Montgomery is still on the team. They still have a couple of guys that can lead the front of their rotation. And so I wonder if they try to free up that $14 million. So Zach Gallen is another name that I would have thrown out there as a trade candidate in that Garrett Crochet bucket. He's going to cost less than Crochet because you're getting 1 year of control of him. But somebody to keep an eye on.
Right. I think an interesting part of the Zach Gallen equation, too, is like, if you're Steve Cohen and David Stearns, do you say, hey, listen, you don't want Jordan Montgomery, we know that, throw him in and like sweeten the pot a little bit, and maybe that'll be worth some top prospects? Because the Mets probably won't keep Jordan Montgomery around if they do trade for him as part of the Zach Gallen trade. But like, if that helps the Mets case to bring in a pitcher like Zach Gallen, even if it's just for a year, like, I think that's possible.
Yeah, we'll take all of that money off your hands. We'll take the full contract. So we'll clear $34 million off your books. We'll give you a couple of maybe not top end prospects, but middle of the road prospects. You freed up $34 million for you to spend in free agency. You got yourself rid of the Jordan Montgomery situation, and we make Jordan Montgomery a swingman. We cut Jordan Montgomery. We do whatever we want to do with Jordan Montgomery because we can eat the money. Yeah, I mean, that is a tool that Steve has done the reverse of. He has sent the player out and ate all the money. He has not really done the reverse of it, where he's taken on a big contract to maybe land a bigger fish. So this is what this time of year provides, because you can't do something that creative in the middle of the year. There's just the appetite is not there to do it. In the offseason, everybody's interested in everything, and so you can get creative and do things like that. We have a lot more to get to, and we're almost at the half-hour mark, so we'll try to blast through the rest of this here and not have a super mega episode, but I kind of had a feeling this was going to be the case. How many relievers do you have? I have 2 relievers.
I have written down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I can go through them quickly, especially if you're starting with the pitcher I think you're going to bring up.
I'm going to start with a guy who is a reliever, but I also think could be a starter if they don't land one of these other guys, or they choose to make this guy a starter.
And it is not Clay Holmes.
No, it's not Clay Holmes. It is a better version of Clay Holmes. It is a better pitcher than Clay Holmes. I think the New York Mets, and we know this person particularly well because we kind of smacked them around in the postseason when we played his team. I was being nice
because did smack him around.
If he's going to be a future Met, I want him to embrace us. I'm trying to be nice, but I think the New York Mets should sign. If you want to keep him as a reliever, I'm good with this too. But I think he has the stuff to play as a starter. I'd go sign Jeff Hoffman. Mm-hmm. Do yourself a favor. I know he blew up in the postseason, but it was a complete disaster class across the board for the Philadelphia bullpen. So it was not just Jeff Hoffman. It was an infection broke out in the Phillies bullpen, and everybody forgot how to pitch. Go look at what Jeff Hoffman's StatCast page was for last year. Elite level chase percentage, whiff percentage, strikeout percentage, expected ERA, expected batting average, throws a slider, throws a sinker, throws a splitter, throws a traditional four seam. I mean, he's got the makeup of what we expect a David Stearns reliever and or starter to look like. I'm sure somehow he'll just break camp and start throwing a sweeper for the New York Mets, because that's what guys do nowadays. But I would sign Jeff Hoffman. It's going to cost some commitment. But I mean, I look at and I don't know the specifics. What did Jordan Hicks get when he signed with the Giants? I'm going to look it up real quick.
That's a very interesting comparison in terms of profile.
Because when Jordan Hicks signed and he got the money that he did, everyone was like, you paid Jordan Montgomery how much? They gave him a 4-year, $44 million contract, and they basically said, hey, we're going to take you, great reliever, but we think you can be a starter and give us like 4 or 5 innings every time out, so we're going to do that. Would you, if the Mets signed Jeff Hoffman, who's 31 years old, to a 3-year, $33 million contract, 3-year, $30 million contract, he's a $10 million reliever. He's an elite reliever. We've seen it. And he's been a starter in the past. And I think with a couple of tweaks, which we've seen the Mets are really good at, you now have a pretty cheap back end of the rotation starter that can eat up innings for you for $10 million. And I hate to keep bringing it back to this. You paid Frankie Montas $17 million to basically do the same thing.
Right. Yeah. I think I want to counter a point that I might see people making, and I don't know if this is true or if I'm just making a false equivalence in my head. People might think about guys like Seth Lugo and how he was supposedly a starter and then went back to the bullpen and became a great reliever, kind of like what Jeff Hoffman has become.
I have a question. One quick follow-up question.
Sure.
How is Seth Lugo doing as a starter for the Kansas City Royals? How's that working out for Kansas City?
I don't know if you have paid attention to the news. Seth Lugo is a finalist for the AL Cy Young this year.
Okay. I just wanted a clarification. Thank you.
Yeah. But I also wanted to draw the comparison to say, like, people might be concerned that the Mets aren't able to do something like that. Like, they were the ones who cast off Seth Lugo and allowed him to become a free agent and become eventually a starting pitcher who has been pitching at a very high level. The Seth Lugo situation, when he became a reliever in the first place, was under different ownership, under a different regime in the front office, a less statistics-focused, analytics-focused front office. And I think if the Mets could do it all over again, like, there's a really good chance that Seth Lugo never ends up in the bullpen anyway. And I think Jeff Hoffman is kind of could be a success story, redeem team story of, the Mets front office bringing a guy in who's a reliever, turning him back into a starting pitcher, and finding a lot of success. So I really am on board with that. He's also a name that I had down on my list. I just don't know what that deal is going to look like, because it's going to be, paying a top-end reliever, but also maybe starting pitching money.
Yeah, I think the Jordan Hicks contract is probably where you start. And that's kind of the ballpark of what you're looking at. It's not a ton AAV-wise, but it is maybe a little bit drastic because you're signing a reliever to a multi-year deal, but he's actually going to be a starter for you, and I think it's going to be jarring at first. But I'm all on board with the Jeff Hoffman as either. If they signed him and they said he's the reliever for us, I'm on board. If they signed him and they said we think he can be a starter for us, I'm on board either way. I think Jeff Hoffman would be a great addition to this Mets team for 2025.
Yeah, so rebuilding the bullpen just in general was a big point for me. Obviously, that's kind of just a seasonal thing for every team. I wrote down like 4 guys that I think are going to be key pieces that are staying with the Mets, and that's Daniel Nunez, Reed Garrett, Edwin Diaz, and maybe Sean Reed-Foley. Just in general, though, like I can't watch another season of Adam Ottavino. I really
not a fan.
I can't see him really having a reliable role in 2025. Like Danny Young, I think is still on the roster. I don't see him being a super reliable piece. I know the Mets made moves. They signed Dylan Covey, and Justin Hagenman, but those guys feel like more depth with some upside rather than like key established pieces. Yep. So the next name I have on my list is a key established piece, also on a World Series winning team this season. That's Blake Trinan, and he's
this is the first time we're doing. I hate this. I'm going to tell you why I hate this in a second, but this is the first time we've disagreed this strongly. I hate this suggestion.
Interesting. I just think like Blake Trinan's 37, and so I think because of that he would be a little bit of a cheaper option in the bullpen. But like looking at the kind of run of dominance that he's had since going to the Dodgers, I think that the Mets with their pitching development team can keep up that streak. I don't know if he's going to be the same level as he has been over the last few years, but like I don't know, man. Like the Mets again signed Adam Ottavino, and he was pitching important innings for them last year. So like a guy like Blake Trinan, who's on the older side, I think he has a lot more upside than another depth piece that they could bring in.
I think signing Blake Trinan would just be a different way to watch Adam Ottavino pitch for the New York Mets. That's
really?
That's the fall off I think is coming for Blake Trinan. He's going to be 37.
I know, but you could get him on like a 1-year deal because of that age, or like 2 years maybe, and you don't have to pay him that much.
Okay, all right. I'm going to try to be fair to Blake Trinan, but this is what I'm battling right now. Do you know what his fastball stuff plus was last year?
I don't.
71.
Okay.
Do you know what his sinker stuff plus was last year?
No.
78. His cutter that he threw some of the time, a career low 35 stuff plus. His best pitch was his slider at 134. He has one pitch. He's a one-pitch pitcher at 37 years old after throwing a ton in the postseason. I'll pass. I will pass.
Fair enough. That's fair enough.
Pass.
A lot of the guys that I looked at for the bullpen are just kind of these guys with higher upside that have a potential to blow up, honestly, which thinking about it now is not a great look. In that similar vein, I had Andrew Chafin on here. I've thought of him as a good fit for the Mets for like 3 years now. I remember when the Tigers gave him his contract, I was like, man, I kind of wish the Mets were in on a guy like Chafin. A good lefty reliever out of the pen. He had a rough couple of years after signing that deal, ironically, but he's a guy who's a slider first pitcher, and he has a sinker in his arsenal. I mean, you look at the pitchers that David Stearns has brought in, that's kind of a good fit for what they're trying to do. Also on the older side, also probably won't be that much in terms of money because of his struggles recently. So I think a guy like Chafin would be a nice addition to the bullpen, especially as a lefty.
There are two names, and the Walker Buehler Shane Bieber thing is something that we have proof that I can take credit for as somebody that talked about this maybe before it became popular. Yeah. There are two names on my list that I haven't gotten to. One is a reliever and one is an outfielder that we'll get to later. That I am like, I haven't heard anybody in Mets land or anybody in Mets Twitter or anywhere talk about these guys, and I am campaigning for these guys. Like, these are my dudes. Yeah. You and I used to work in the draft space. We used to have our guys that we love. One of these two guys are my dudes, where if they end up on the Mets, I'm going to be overjoyed. What if I told you can land a 30-year-old left-handed reliever who only threw 11 innings last year and hasn't thrown a ton over the last couple of years because of injury, but is 30 years old, is a lefty, which we know this bullpen needs, and his arsenal is slider, sinker, change, sweeper? What would you say if I could offer that and it would cost you like peanuts?
That sounds like a really nice fit for the Mets, Chris.
And what if I told you that person, if he would have qualified last year, would have had a elite above average chase percentage, a whiff percentage, hard hit percentage, and ground ball percentage, while also having above average K percentage, and extension. You would say that's a reliever that the Mets could probably do something with when you consider the workload. How about lefty, 30-year-old, pitched for the Pirates last year, Ryan Borucki? That is the guy that I am campaigning for. I told you the arsenal. He's a sinker, sweeper guy. We know the Mets love that. We know that's what the Mets covet out of their relievers. He's a lefty. They need him to be able to get right-handed hitters out. That's going to be an issue. But they need a lefty in this bullpen. He only threw 11 innings last year. Yes, he had a 7.36 ERA, but you look under the hood, elite chase percentage, elite whiff percentage, and it's not just one-year noise. He's had it for the last couple of years. Keeps the ball on the ground with that sinker and with the changeup. He keeps the ball on the ground. I think this is one of those. David Stearns, he's going to sign this guy, and everyone's going to be like, who's this guy? And we're going to be like, yep, we told you about this guy. He fits the profile. He's a lefty. And in the middle of the year, you're going to be like, man, can't believe David Stearns got this guy. So he is one of the two guys on this list for me that I'm going to campaign hard for, because I think you can get this guy. I think you can get him on the cheap side of things, and I think this is a player that can really be somebody for this bullpen and provide something they didn't have at the end of last year, which is a lefty that they could trust.
Yeah, that's a really good call. I really like that a lot. And like you said, it's not a pitcher that anyone really has heard of probably, and certainly not someone that's been the talk of the town in this offseason. If I may, Chris, I have one more pitcher in the possible bullpen / rotation kind of situation that Jeff Hoffman is in. And this is a real doozy. I don't know if I have full faith in this guy. He's not one of my quote-unquote guys like Borucki is for you. But Joe Ross is really intriguing to me. If you are a Mets fan, which you probably are if you're listening to this, you might remember Joe Ross from his days as a starter with the Washington Nationals. Well, this past season, he played for the Milwaukee Brewers, who, if you don't know, is David Stearns' previous team. And he pitched in 25 games and started 10 of them, which, is something that intrigues me a little bit, because he has the ability to obviously be a starter as he has in the past, but has switched back to the pen as recently as this past year. 74 innings, 3.77 ERA, and he's a ground ball guy, and his two highest pitches in terms of run value, according to StatCast, Chris, his slider and his sinker. The whiff percentage that was the highest of his career this year in Milwaukee. So, I don't know. He's not going to be a ton of money, because he, I think, missed all of 2023 with Tommy John. He had a one halfway bounce back year with the Brewers this year, but he only started 10 games because he ended up straining his back and then went to the bullpen when he came back from the injury. So another guy that's kind of out there, kind of a doozy, but I really feel like the Mets could give him a contract to be a bullpen guy and maybe, more depth in the rotation if they really needed it down the stretch.
All right, let's get to some hitters. I've got 4 hitters, 3 hitters that I'd like to discuss. I have the New York Mets signing a first baseman as part of my dream offseason.
I do too, and it's one not named Pete Alonso.
For me, it is a first baseman not named Pete Alonso as well, which makes me think we have the same first baseman. There's
kind of 2 big first basemen that people are talking about.
Yeah, do you have them signing Christian Walker?
I do.
Yeah, so do I. And I'll explain my reasoning for getting here. By the way, that's the 5th name that we've agreed on so far. I think at some point, and maybe it's this offseason with some of the things that I have going on, Mark Vientos is not going to be the third baseman long term.
Yes.
So you either are going to make him the first baseman or you're going to make him the DH, right? You're going to do one of those two things.
Yes.
And so I think locking yourself into Pete Alonso for a 6 or 7 year deal and basically just landlocking first base, because there's nothing else you can do with Pete. He either plays first or he's the DH, right? It's like what Giancarlo Stanton is for the Yankees. He can't play the outfield. He's just the DH. They just don't have a choice. I don't want to landlock my first baseman for the next 6 seasons when he's 30, 31 years old. I don't want to do that. Christian Walker is 34, but Christian Walker plays elite defense, better defense than Pete.
Yep.
He's going to provide me similar pop, and he is only going to probably cost me a 3 or a 4 year contract. And so then I have a shorter runway. Here's the other thing that I will say, and this is going to make me very unpopular in Mets land, and I'm okay with it. You sign Pete Alonso, you bring Pete Alonso back. In everybody's minds, and in the way the team is constructed, Pete Alonso is expected to be the number 2 or number 3 offensive option. If they sign Juan Soto, it'll be Soto, it'll be Lindor, and then it'll be Pete. I think if you build a team with Pete Alonso as your number 2 or number 3 offensive threat, you are setting yourself up for failure. You are setting yourself up to be disappointed and go through the highs and lows that are having Pete Alonso as your team. You sign Christian Walker, You're asking Christian Walker to be your 5th, 6th best offensive threat. And by the way, you're going to get similar output to what Pete Alonso would do. Is Christian Walker going to hit 50 home runs? No. But Christian Walker is going to play better defense. Christian Walker is going to be able to hit 30 home runs. Christian Walker is going to be able to give you exactly what you want at a first base at a cheaper price. Yes, he's older. It's a less commitment. It's less dollars overall. And I think it allows you to put together a better, well-constructed team where Christian Walker is going to be asked to be like the 5th or 6th option in the lineup. He's going to bat like 5th or 6th on a regular basis, instead of having Pete just shoehorned into the top 4 of the order and watch Pete Alonso strike out in big moments over and over and over again. And I love Pete. And if he was back, I'm not going to be upset about it. But that's what led me to wanting to sign Christian Walker over bringing back Pete.
Yeah, you basically took every point that I was going to make about Walker, so I'm glad we're in agreement on everything. It's just I really struggle with the concept of giving Pete Alonso a contract that's between like 6 and 8 years. And a part of that is because of how old he will be by the end of that deal, but another part of it is, I brought this up a little while ago when we were recapping the Mets infielders, Pete Alonso's regression is something that is real and is already kind of happening in terms of like his power, his fielding is still bad. Like, there is a lot to be worried about because he's still chasing bad pitches. He's hitting fewer home runs than he has in past years. Like, 35 is a lot of home runs, don't get me wrong. But Christian Walker hit, I think, 25 last year. If you sign Juan Soto, you're basically getting back, quote unquote, all of the home runs you're losing, quote unquote, if you are letting Pete Alonso walk, and then some. And I just am much more okay with signing a first baseman with better defense, with similar power numbers, to a shorter term, lesser AAV deal like Christian Walker, and not hamstringing your first base options for the future than I am with doing that with Pete Alonso and kind of eating what I think, if they stick with him, could end up being an albatross contract that they're not happy with within the next 2 or 3 years.
This is the dream offseason, right? It's what I would want the Mets to do. It's not what they're actually going to do. It's the dream offseason, right?
Yeah.
I have them.
I had an interesting realization, too, when I was looking through Mets transactions just to, like, confirm certain players.
Yeah.
Did you know the Mets signed a first baseman already this offseason?
The Mets signed a first baseman
to a minor league contract, so it was definitely one that would have flown under the radar.
They signed somebody to a minor league contract.
And it was
you're going to tell me, and I'm going to be like, oh, yeah, I remember this, but in the moment, I don't remember this, no.
Remember Joey Meneses?
I do remember them doing this, yes. And I knew the moment you said it that they were going to do this. Yep, I remember it.
So,
yeah,
they're not going to go with Joey Meneses at first base, but like that is an interesting note that they're already, looking at a minor league contract for another first baseman. That's not Pete Alonso.
It'll be
Brian Windhorst meme.
It's simple. We had Jose Iglesias and OMG. Joey Meneses will be the next pop star. I don't know what he'll come up with, but he'll just fall right in line with the New York Mets. And
he was really good in that rookie season as like a 30-year-old for the Nats.
He was, and then that was it. That was all it was.
But there's something there. Maybe
I have the Mets signing another infielder.
Ooh, I do not. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on who this is and why.
Do you want to guess who it is?
I'm going to assume it's not Jose Iglesias.
It's not Jose Iglesias, no.
Can you give me a position, or would that give it away?
I think for the New York Mets, he would play third base.
Ooh.
Because in this scenario, I believe Mark Vientos will be the DH. Yeah.
I'm going to need you to just tell me, because I don't know.
It's extremely obvious when you think about the Mets front office.
Okay. I got it, I think.
Okay.
Is it Willy Adames?
Willy Adames on the New York Mets in 2025. Wow. How about we spend some dollars and we get a third baseman in here? He's already shown that he is willing to play third base. The Mets, I don't think, while Mark Vientos' defense, I would say, was passable. If this was driver's ed, we'd give him his license, but it wasn't great. He's not going to be able to teach the class in the future. They want an upgrade at the third base defense. Why not get somebody who has that flexibility where, hey, Lindor goes down, all right, Willy Adames, you slide over to shortstop. Mark Vientos, you go back to third base, and we feel really comfortable with our left side of the infield defense. So let's sign somebody who, for all intents and purposes, would be the perfect clubhouse guy. Everything you hear about the way he would. Now, this probably means Jesse Winker can't come back because him and Willy Adames will probably fight in the clubhouse.
They'd have to meet in the parking lot.
They would have to meet in the parking lot. They'd have to pay off that feud. But everything about what we've heard from Willy Adames in Milwaukee is he's beloved as a clubhouse leader. And you know what? I think the Mets kind of need that a little bit. I think they need somebody else in there along with Francisco Lindor, who is the leader of this team. But you need all the guys you can get in the world to cultivate the right culture. And Willy Adames feels like the perfect culture fit for this team. David Stearns is going to be incredibly familiar with him. He's going to be able to improve your defense on the left side. He's going to provide a ton of pop. He's going to be a perfect player for what the New York Mets want to do. And it allows you to move Mark Vientos into, dude, just smack the crap out of the ball, man. Can you just hit me 30 home runs? Just do you, man. Just be what you were in the postseason. Don't worry about your defense. Just be who you are. And to me, that would be a huge home run. So I have Willy Adames signing with the New York Mets in my dream offseason.
I weirdly thought for some reason you're going to say Gleyber Torres, and I was going to be very confused.
I want nothing to do with Gleyber Torres, and it's extremely personal. I am in a fantasy baseball league that is run like it is an actual MLB organization. You have a salary cap. You have dollars that you can allocate. There is a minor league draft. There is a franchise player draft where there's a pool of players that can't get signed to long-term deals. When you get a guy, you sign him to a long-term contract. It is like I'm running an organization. And we got to the auction phase, and I was like, dude, free agent, Gleyber Torres, Yankee Stadium. Dude's going to want the bag. He's going to hit like 35 homers in that ballpark. He's going to be awesome. I went all in. He was like the guy. I was like, whatever it is, I'm overpaying for Gleyber Torres. Yeah, it was great for me.
Didn't age too well.
He got benched midway through the year for me. I played somebody else.
Yeah, I think Adames is a really intriguing option. I'm wondering about how much that will cost.
Dream offseason, baby. I don't care about the cost. Dream offseason.
I know. I'm like, because my whole thing for throughout this whole thing has been kind of trying to stay below still that mark of however much.
Yeah, I blew past it.
Yeah, and that's okay. But like signing Juan Soto is obviously like the top of the
Yes.
list. I think Adames is a really interesting option. But rather than spending that money on Adames, I had the Mets spending a little bit more on a premier option, I would say, at designated hitter. Leave Mark Vientos at third base. Leave Christian Walker at first base. Spend some money on a guy who I don't know actually if he's played DH specifically, but he is an outfielder that had quite the season this year. Chris, do you have any guesses?
Is this my guy?
Is it your guy?
No, you want them to sign Anthony Santander.
No. But that's an interesting one, too.
And Santander would be interesting. He'd have to be the DH because he can't play the outfield.
I was thinking a guy who played in the outfield, I think, all season, primarily left field. He had the worst fielding run value of his career this year.
Jurickson Profar is going to be our DH?
Nope. You're in the right division, though.
I'm in the right we're signing Teoscar Hernandez?
That was the dream. Teoscar Hernandez hit 33 home runs this year and stole 12 bases, which is, pretty good for a 32-year-old man. Okay. And I think if the Mets are going to spend big money on a bat, and they didn't do it for Pete Alonso, they already spent a good amount on Juan Soto. Teoscar Hernandez can be a DH because his bat was phenomenal. He won the home run derby this year. Like, he's a guy that is declining in terms of his value as a fielder, and I think in his mid-30s, where he is now, or will be when the Mets sign him to any kind of multi-year contract, he is going to be a great DH option and give the Mets the best designated hitter that they've had since it was added to the National League.
So I have an outfielder who isn't the greatest fielder. And I think my idea behind this move is to give Carlos Mendoza and the New York Mets options. Okay. Give them multiple DH options, give them multiple options in the outfield, give Carlos Mendoza choices, right? And I think this guy, what did you just say about Teoscar Hernandez? How many home runs did he hit last year?
33.
What if I told you can get somebody who hit 31 home runs last year? What if I told you can get somebody who drove in 61 RBIs and only played in 113 games? What if I told you can get somebody who could realistically play all three positions in the outfield? Is it going to be great? No. Is it going to be passable? I would say passable is fair. Has elite arm strength, 82nd percentile arm strength last year. What if I told you this guy had an 847 OPS last year and would cost you less than I think Teoscar Hernandez would cost? What if I told you all those things were true?
You're going to tell me that you want the Mets to sign Jock Peterson.
I'm going to tell you that the second guy joining the Ryan Barucki bucket for me is a guy that I believe I've talked about on this podcast before. Go sign Tyler O'Neill, please. Go
that's
sign
right.
Tyler O'Neill, who had a huge season for the Boston Red Sox. Played in 113 games, hit 31 home runs, had a 241 average, a 336 on base, an 847 OPS. Last year, 98th percentile barrel percentage. 90th percentile hard hit rate. Why do I throw all these numbers at you? Because these are the things that make you a good hitter. These are the things that make you hit 35 home runs. These are the things that you look for in a player. How about elite walk percentage? 87th percentile. He walked 11.2% of the time last year. Elite at laying off bad pitches. How often do we see Mets and key spots have some terrible ABs? Starlin Marte, I'm looking at you, buddy. And you up there, 3 pitches, strikes out, sits down in a big spot. Guess what? Tyler O'Neill in that spot, 87th percentile walk percentage. His chase percentage was above average, 65th percentile. He hits the ball really hard, 90th percentile bat speed. He barrels it up. It's hit hard. He walks a ton, has decent arm strength. Get me Tyler O'Neill. So Carlos Mendoza had choices in the outfield. He has choices at DH. If he wants to maybe move guys around on a given day and give Willy Adames a break or give Francisco Lindor a break or do whatever he's got to do, add Tyler O'Neill to this team.
That is very intriguing. The thing that I'm currently looking at right now, Chris, is his left-hand pitcher versus right-hand pitcher splits.
Looking at his splits, and you're going to tell me that you don't like him.
I have some concerns,
Yeah.
and I'll just read you some numbers. The power remains consistent across both. He has 16 home runs last year against lefties and 15 against righties, so that's pretty much a wash. But he hit 313, and I know average isn't everything, but he hit 313 with 49 strikeouts and 26 walks against lefties. He hit 208.
Sure.
With 110 strikeouts and 27 walks against righties.
I understand. But you're going to... Starling Marte can't play every day.
Right.
And I think... Which corner are you sticking Soto in?
The right.
You wouldn't stick him in left?
No, I don't think so. I think Nimmo from left to right, Nimmo, Jose Siri, Juan Soto.
Nimmo, Jose Siri, Juan Soto. Nimmo, Jose Siri. A lot of lefties in the outfield. I just noticed that, just for whatever reason.
Yeah, good point.
All lefties in the outfield. So maybe Tyler O'Neill fits in there. Again, I think truly because I thought about this while we were doing this. I think Willy Adames and Tyler O'Neill is a choose your own adventure. I would like them to get both. I don't think they would get both because I think one, that's $42 million for Adames and Tyler O'Neill AAV wise, and I think what they would do is if you sign Willy Adames and you move Mark Vientos to DH, then Tyler O'Neill probably can't be your DH. If you sign Tyler O'Neill to be your DH, then Mark Vientos is probably playing third base. And maybe you don't get Christian Walker and you move Vientos over to first base and you sign Willy Adames to play third. Like Walker, Adames, and Tyler O'Neill is probably overkill. It probably creates a little bit of a logjam for Carlos Mendoza. But you know what? It was my dream offseason. I can do what I want. I can spend $172 million in AAV and figure it out later.
Yeah, absolutely. Those splits are a little I would not mind this as a platoon option because the numbers are clearly suggesting. I should say, like I said, the home runs are a wash, but he hit more home runs against lefties in 155 fewer at bats against lefties. Like the opportunity is so there for him to just absolutely mash lefty pitching, which is exactly what the Mets were hoping they'd get with JD Martinez last year. It did not work out, but. Like, I think if you do sign Tyler O'Neill, I would need to see another DH option to face lefty or to face righty pitchers.
Or he's a platoon because you got Tyrone Taylor too, so it kind of there's a little bit of a logjam out there. If you, I don't know, I just love. I love the hitting metrics, and I would love him to be a part of a platoon to face lefties because I think he would crush them.
Oh,
like I think it would be insane what he could provide value.
I don't think he could be an everyday DH.
I think you could get away with it if you got some of these other guys and you can kind of hide them. I think it could work. That's the reason why I'd campaign for it because again, he would be like your 6th or 7th option in your lineup.
You know what I would like if they do sign Tyler O'Neill is bring back Jesse Winker. Like that's a great DH platoon right there.
Oh, that's fantastic. Or if you don't, I know what I'm about to say is against what we're doing here on the show. Let's say they miss on Soto.
Whoa.
Let's say they miss on Soto.
Whoa.
and just Starling Marte can't play every day.
No.
You could give me like Winker, O'Neill, Marte, platoon blob in right field /DH. Like it's just a blob.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. You could stick Winker and O'Neill out in right field if you needed to, assuming that Soto doesn't come. Which,
yeah, I didn't want to put it out there, but I apologize. I'd like to.
That is the number one wish list item for both of us.
Yes, that is going to do it for us here on this Dream offseason. We gave you almost an hour's worth of breakdown of all the players that we want. Some similar, some different. We took some diverging paths here on this journey. We threw out some names that we have been campaigning for, at least behind the scenes to each other, and got to talk about them with you all. So we appreciate you joining us here today on the show. Please make sure you rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. Give us those 5 stars. We greatly appreciate it. It helps us grow the show. It helps support the show, and it's free. It doesn't cost you anything to do it, and it helps us out a ton. So we would very much appreciate that. Jack, where can everybody follow you on social media?
Yeah, please feel free to follow me on X at JF, as in Franklin McKessie. That is not my middle name. Okay. Or on Bluesky at jfmcKessie.bsky.social.
Follow me on Twitter at Chris Schubert _, and then on Bluesky it is CRSchube, so CRSCHUBE.bsky.social. That's going to do it for us here on this edition of the show. We appreciate it. Probably be back with a weekend episode. If there's any emergency stuff that happens and the Mets sign somebody, we will be here to break it all down with you. But I think our next regularly scheduled programming will hit your inbox, hit your podcast feeds over the weekend. So everybody make it a great rest of your week. We will talk to you next time. Let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.